Hello and welcome to Getting It Done, a podcast about music, education, and life lessons. I'm your host, Tim Rausenberger. Today is Sunday, January 19th, 2020. This is episode 329. Martin Luther King Jr. Hard work, leadership, and purpose. Thank you so much for tuning in for our first live episode of the new decade 2020, depending on what you consider to be a decade. We know that recently in the news there were some political figures who were debating when a decade actually spans, but I'll go with 2020 as being the start of the new decade. Welcome, and thank you for joining me on this special Martin Luther King Jr. edition of Getting It Done, where we're going to do not one, but two podcasts on back-to-back evenings to highlight the accomplishments and great work of this outstanding individual. Tonight, I'm going to be speaking about his hard work, his leadership and purpose through various quotes from the course of his life. And tomorrow evening, I will be reciting his I have a dream speech, as well as different components of his life that I feel we all should consider living our own lives by. So, without further ado, we're going to get into various quotes that Martin Luther King gave throughout his life. And here we are, nearly 60 years later, and in some cases more than 60 years later, where these quotes still ring true today. And I hope they can be helpful in some way, shape, and form. Before we get started, you may have noticed that we have a blue background, a new drop set here with the Getting It Done podcast, and I appreciate Esther mentioning that. Why blue? Why not? I think that's probably one way of putting it, but I'm going to be experimenting with different types of backgrounds in the podcasts to come. So we'll have to find out if blue will be the color tomorrow night. But I know that a lot of people have mentioned my blue eyes. I don't know if that was a little different with what I just did there with my eyes, but hopefully that will help out. Red, we're going to stay away from red for right now, but we'll probably have red in future episodes. So Esther, thank you so much for tuning in. If there's anyone else out there who would like to jump into the chat at any time, as always, I'm here to interact. I think there's one thing that separates my podcast from other podcasts is that I'm very much interested in interacting with the people in the chat box and being able to provide hopefully some meaningful feedback to you. So if you have not had a chance to bang that like button, little thumbs up there, I would appreciate it. And if you could pass the episode along to others, I'm sure that this will be something that'll be helpful to many people. So I'm going to throw some quotes here into the chat, and hopefully they are going to be ones that you are going to consider incorporating into your daily lives through the words of Dr. King. So we're going to start off with quote number one, which is, "Whatever your life's work is, do it well. A man should do his job so well that the living, the dead, and the unborn could do it no better." Now, you need to understand that this was even back at the time when we were when civil rights was a very, very hot topic. You need to understand that whenever you read quotes and you see a man, it it means everyone. We're talking about all people, men, women, and whatever it is that you identify as. So it's important that when you read these quotes, that you understand that this came from a time where it was commonplace for someone to say a man. Uh, to address this quote, you're going to see a lot of quotes tonight that are going to be comparable to this one about a man should do it in such a manner that no one could do it better. Very simply put, is that you need to take whatever that job is that you have, or whatever your work is, your way of life, and you need to do it to the absolute best of your ability. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to be better than others. I do think that everyone has the option and the possibilities to be able to put your own uh, uh, fingerprints, your own footprints, your own hand stamp on the way that you would like things to be in your occupation, the way that others should follow you. I try to do things each day that are different than what other people do. I try to teach music. I try to inspire others. I try to bring out the best in people, and I tend to use methods that might be very commonplace and other ones that are very unorthodox to do anything and everything in my power to be able to maximize the potential of both myself and the people who are around me. So that's number one. We're going to go to number two. And this is one of those quotes that you're going to find is going to be one of several that Dr. King has here that are quite profound. Number two, we are not makers of history. We are made by history. So what does that ultimately come down to? It comes down to you doing everything to the best of your ability, the best of your ability, but that ultimately history is defined by ultimately your acts in the end. So it's not about just making history. It's that you are just a part, and you are a person who is there in time. One of my greatest music teachers, Bill Teubner, who was a trumpet instructor of mine at Wilkes University, Bill used to always say to me that music never stops, never starts and stops, that music always continues. It just keeps going. And whenever you are going to make a sound on the trumpet, whenever you are going to sing, whenever you're going to do anything with music, and you are about to create sound, when that is about to occur, you are simply joining music as it is taking place. You are not just making this big splash. And I think that there are a lot of people out there that think the exact opposite. I couldn't agree more with Bill in that regard, where you're just, we are one of 8 or 9 billion human beings on Earth. Think about that for a moment. One of 8 or 9 billion. And there are so many people who are doing everything they can to try to go out of their way to try to make a splash. And that's great. And that's fine if that's your MO, that's what you want to do. But ultimately, in the end, if you work hard, if you do things right, then, and you know what, in some cases, you may even do things wrong. But the hard work in the end, it will reap benefits. And I know that that's very hard to say if you're someone who's unemployed right now. I know that that's very, very challenging if you are in one of those jobs that feels, if you feel hopeless, you feel helpless, you're not making enough money. But I am living proof that hard work will win out in the end. And Dr. King felt the same way as well. So, in terms of being able to make history, uh, I already know after 24 years in public education, I know that I have not even come close to making the type of history that I want to make. My story, in so many ways, is just starting to be written, and I'm hoping with the types of trails that I'm going to blaze in the future, that many, many more stories will be able to be written about me by the time I hit the end, whenever that time is going to be. Number 3. Let's get this into the chat here. And Carlos, thank you very much for your feedback. I appreciate that a great deal. Number 3, if a man has not discovered something that he will die for, he isn't fit to live. If you haven't discovered something that you're going to die for, that is finding your passion. That's finding your purpose in life. And if you haven't figured out what that is and why that's so important, you need to do that. You need to look within yourself. You need to figure out what it is that you enjoy the most. It doesn't necessarily mean that your purpose in life is related to what you're doing with your occupation. And in many ways, may never be the case. I think of someone who I work with, who is, I mean, just a grade A human being, salt of the earth, amazing individual. This is a person who is very, very happy at her job. She loves what she does. But the thing that makes her special is that she knows that her purpose is it comes within what she does outside of this job, the type of volunteering that she does. And in her cases, it has to do with nursing homes. It has to do with visiting veterans in different types of types of venues. This person is very, very special, and realized that that was her calling after some different things that happened in her life. But she didn't just quit her job to do that. She understood that she had to continue to make a living. She enjoys what she does very, very much, but she realized that the thing that brought her the most fulfillment was being able to give back to others in those particular places. So that's something to think about, and you need to discover what you're really, really great at. I think of the people in this chat. I look at all these people, and including this guy named Shane. I'm not sure who this person is. Must be some type of impersonator or something. But if I look at Shane, if I look at Esther, if I look at Carlos, I look at people who are in this chat, I know, having spoken to all 3 of those individuals, I know that they all have a very specific purpose in life. All 3 of them have something to bring to the table. I'm sorry, I had to break character there just a minute, just because of what Esther typed. I think the word could be perhaps. I think that'll be a good word that we can say to that, Esther. All right, we're going to move on to number 4. And this is where Dr. King's great, because he challenges people, and that was what was very special about him. Number 4, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? What's your reason for being? What's the reason that you are here? What have you done for other people? Have you been someone who uh, is a nuisance? Have you been someone that holds doors open for people? Are you someone who goes onto social media and says nasty things about people for reasons unknown or reasons very, very well known? Are you someone who is sitting at home and doing things only for yourself, but you're not doing a thing for another human being, or for that, not even just a human being? I think I would go even I'll go even further with that quote. What are you doing for others? I think that if you're even doing something in terms of raising a pet, I think that that is absolutely every bit as important, and in some cases more important than what you're doing for other people. Because you know what? One of the greatest things about raising a pet is that pet is not going to judge you. Now, the pet's going to certainly judge you in a certain type of way if you're not nice to the pet. That's one way that the pet will judge you. But that's one of the greatest things about having a pet is that that pet is going to love you unconditionally. And you think about the people out there who have a very, very special bond with a dog, with a cat, with a bird, what have you. There's so many different types of animals that people are very, very passionate about. But in terms of other people, uh, how important is it that you do something special for another human being? I know that this past week, I sent out special messages to people who are important for me, important to me. And sent them out at least twice this past week. I sent out different types of things just to motivate people, positive, inspirational quotes. And one in some cases, I sent more than two in hopes of being able to help some people out who I think could use it. And that's important. It's really, really important, because in the end, and I've said this in the past, when you look at your gravestone, 1756 to 1791, that would be Mozart. 1756 isn't important. 1791 is not important. The fact that he lived for 35 years is not important. What's important is the dash. What did he do? How did he impact the lives of others? What did he do for other people? What did he do for the world of music, and how he impacted other people for so many years to come? And that's what you need to think about. You need to think about, what is the legacy you are going to leave behind? Because I can assure you that if the legacy you're leaving behind is leaving comments on Twitter, it's not much of a legacy. Let's go to number 5. This one's long, so we need to break it up a little bit here. Should be able to get this in to copy and paste. So let's give it a shot here. There we go. Yep. This is a long one. And it's ironic because it also has to do with a composer. I did not plan it this way. Wow, Esther. Esther, that's a tough comment right there, Esther. Esther bringing it to the house. There we go. And hello to Mary and Just Some Guy 471. And Carlos, I'm so happy to hear that you're doing your homework, and I'm hoping that this information is going to help you out. Number 5, if a man is called to be a street sweeper, he should sweep streets, even as Michelangelo painted or Beethoven composed music, or Shakespeare wrote poetry. He should sweep streets so well that all the hosts of heaven and earth will pause to say, here lived a great street sweeper who did his job well. I don't know what I can say to that other than preach. I've been saying that forever. I had not read this quote until now. Guilty as charged. These quotes, I pulled them up this past week, and I said I have to do a podcast on these quotes because I skimmed them over. But this particular quote I had not read until now. I have been saying this forever. Whatever the job is that you do, wherever you are in life, do it to the best of your ability. I was even telling my students, we were doing a STEAM activity in school. STEAM. We were doing an activity in school, and we were discussing the activity in detail. And we were talking about the components of each of the letters in the acronym, S, T, E, A, and M. And when we were discussing one of the letters, I was talking to them about different types of careers. And I said, let's say you decide to become a trash collector, a garbage collector, a trash man, garbage man, whatever the I don't know what the politically correct term is. I don't know what the term is. And quite honestly, that's irrelevant at this time. But the person who is going to be removing the trash from the streets, first of all, I have tremendous amounts of respect for these people because number one, it's really not the most desirable job with the types of things that you have to do, not just in terms of collecting trash, but in terms of having to be out in the elements. And I think about them having to collect trash tomorrow or Tuesday and having to do it in the snow and having to do it in the ice. There's no fun in doing that. That's not fun. Plus, there's also a lot of manual labor that's involved. But I said to my students, a few of them laughed, and I said, no, you don't laugh at something like that, because the reality is the people that do it well actually get paid well. There are plenty of people I know that and I do know quite a few people who do that for a living, and they enjoy it, because one of the things about that occupation is you have to assess the situation. You have to look on the sides of the street and figure out with your partner, hopefully if your partner's with you, and with the driver, exactly how you're going to attack it. There's a science that's involved with that particular occupation. And if you approach it with that type of pride, you're going to enjoy it. You're actually going to enjoy it. I know people who are in these positions that other people would look down upon, but they're actually very, very happy. I've met many custodians who are very, very happy with their positions. And I think a lot of them are even happier now because I think nowadays, at least from what I've seen, there are a lot of people who are custodians in schools who are far more respected now than many years ago. Now, that may not be the case in other school districts. I can only speak for the places where I've worked, but I know that all administrations I've ever worked with have always gone out of their way to thank the custodial staff, as well as so many other positions in the school that are not necessarily in the trenches educating children in a classroom. What does it come down to? Whatever the job is that you're doing at this particular time, doesn't matter if you don't like the job. Doesn't matter if you're not happy. You put that off to the side. That's what it's called to be a professional. to be a professional. All right, so we need to say hello to a few new people. Autumn, oh my goodness, it's the incredible Autumn. And I know it's Autumn. The only way that I know it's Autumn is because she said, "What's good?" And she's the only Autumn that I know who says, "What's good?" So what's good to you, Autumn? Thanks for tuning in tonight, and thanks for jumping in. Carlos, you have nailed it, my friend, and I appreciate you chiming in. This is why we have the chat, so people can put things in here uh, for the typical trashman salary. And again, that's it ranges from wherever you live and whatever your circumstances are. But he has 29K to 110K a year. There's absolute merit in that, depending on how many years, what kind of longevity you have. Autumn, we're discussing Martin Luther King Jr. and different types of quotes having to do with hard work. So hopefully this will be helpful to you. Carlos, the one about the janitor being paid $11.95 per hour, not always the case. I've known many janitors who get paid quite a bit more than that. And like I said, many are very, very happy with their positions. Okay, we have wrapped up here with number 5. Let's move on to quote number 6. Now, one of the things that you've noticed about my podcasts is that there are sometimes some words that come in with these quotes where you may not completely understand everything about the words that are in here, and I think it's really an opportunity to be able to broaden your vocabulary, to check out some of these words you may not completely understand. I'll sometimes have some of my younger students who will be in the chat and will ask me, what does something mean? And I think it's a great opportunity to do that. Number 6, all labor that uplifts humanity has dignity and importance and should be undertaken with painstaking excellence. It really comes back to the same type of ideas, number 5, said in, I think, a little more of an eloquent type of way. What does that word mean? Yeah, I love it. So when you think about, this is an interesting one. I think I have to take Dr. King to task on this one, because what he's saying in this particular quote is he's saying that any time that your labor, the work that you are putting forth, that's going to bring someone to a better place mentally, to be able to motivate them, to be able to inspire them, to be able to make them feel better about their overall state of being. He's saying that it should be taken with painstaking excellence. The only way that I disagree is, if you've ever heard that expression, dance like no one is watching, you have to have that type of mindset at all times. You need to be bringing your A game all the time. It's the marching band rehearsal. When you're 2 hours into the 2 hours, it's a 2-hour rehearsal, and you're an hour and 55 minutes in, and you are still bringing it as if the rehearsal just started. It is the person who is at the very, very end of their 9 to 5 shift. It's 4:50, and they see everyone else who's already mentally checked out, and they're starting to check their phones, and they work right up until the very, very last minute. And then at 5:00, contractually, they're free to go. It doesn't mean that you're less noble if at 5:00 you're contractually obligated to go and you decide to leave and others decide to stay behind. But when you're on the clock, you should be giving your all. And I really think that you should be doing that all the time. My voice teacher in college said to me, whenever you are going to sing, specifically if you are going to sing in public, make sure you're always bringing your A game. You never know who will be that into everything that I do in life when it has to do with and I hope that we didn't lose our connection there. We had a slight connection issue. It looks like we are good to go. If somebody could actually type something in the chat, I would appreciate it. I'm just going to write a quick hello. If somebody could just say a quick hello back, then I'll know the connection is good to go. So I will just wait until that happens. A little thing that just came up from you on YouTube that said my connection was unstable, which is strange because we're good to go. Yeah, we're good. Thank you, Autumn. Thank you, Carlos. Okay, so it is so very, very important that you're bringing your A game. When my voice teacher said that, it just like bells went off, and I thought every single time I'm going to sing in public, I have to be absolutely sure that I am ready to go and I'm going to do things to the absolute best of my ability. And I've carried that over into everything that I've done in life, whether it's been jobs I have not enjoyed. And I'm not talking about teaching jobs. I'm talking about other jobs that are outside of teaching. In terms of my teaching, I teach every single day as if it's going to be my last day of teaching or as if somebody's going to be taking my job away from me. And that's the type of way that I bring it every single day in the classroom. And I think that all teachers should heed the same advice. So hopefully that was that clarified. Esther, you had asked, you didn't know what I said about when I was singing. I'll say that one more time. When you are going to sing in public, present yourself, sing in a manner that is the absolute best that you are capable of doing. If you whatever that's going to be, if you, even if you're singing well, if you do not look like you are enjoying yourself, that's going to have an impact on things. If you are not reveling in the excitement and the joy and the opportunity of being able to sing for others, it's going to be very, very apparent to your audience, no matter how well you're singing. I look at some singers and I'll say, what I'm hearing is great, but they look like they're in pain. What I hear is a glorious sound, but they look very, very uninterested. And that's one of the things about singing is that when you have the visual element involved in singing, body language definitely says a lot. And I'm very, very cognizant of that when I come onto a live podcast. There are positives, there are negatives involved in that. I know that people are a lot more apt to listen, a lot more. It's going to be a little easier to understand when you actually can see the person. What would help some of you even more if underneath, if on the bottom, the words were there. Now, what you can do, of course, is when the episode is all finished and I close everything out and you decide to replay the episode, you can, of course, adjust the setting so you can actually have the subtitles underneath and you can follow it even better. I can't do that, unfortunately, when I'm live right now. I don't have that capability. So, okay, we're going to move on here to quote number 7. We're going to be hitting 13 quotes tonight, and we're about at the halfway point here of our hour episode. So we're right on course. We're doing well. Number 7. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. If you want a word that you need to look up, if you want a word that you need to really think about, it's this word: adversity. Adversity is it's one of those words that I really feel, for you to be able to truly appreciate things in life, you need to go through adverse situations. And that's what number 7 is all about. It has to do with not just sitting back and just admiring your work and just being happy at all times. It's so important for people to go through difficult times. So then when the good things happen to you, you can have a better appreciation. Esther, it's interesting that you had mentioned that I look tired. Actually, the reality isn't, to be truthful. I've actually slept a lot this weekend, and I had actually napped a good portion of this day, which is one of the reasons why I may look a little bit tired. And I was very, very much under the weather this past week. I wasn't feeling too well, and it was one of the reasons why I had not originally posted this episode well in advance, because I didn't know if I was going to be feeling up to it. The reality is it's quite the opposite. I'm very, very much enjoying this particular episode, because these quotes are quotes that I live by. They resonate with me, and I feel so strongly about them. So while you may not see it as much in my face as usual, I can assure you that this is a situation where I think Dr. King resonates very much at home for me. Esther, one of the things that's really, really troubling about this weekend and a lot of other 3-day weekends, but specifically this weekend, and I want to address this right now, because I was going to talk about this tomorrow night, but I'm going to address it now. And why? Because I'm the producer, and that's what I feel like doing. There are so many people who are going to have this 3-day weekend, and at no time are they ever going to think about Martin Luther King Jr. Shame on you. Shame on you. If you're one of those people, when you think of the sacrifices that this man made, when you think of the absolute hell that he went through as a person, as a human being, when you think about the adverse situations that he encountered in his life, and you look at any of these trailblazers of any color, gender, creed, race, religion. I mean, the list goes on and on, my friends. Rosa Parks didn't have to do what she did. She made that conscious decision to do what she did. Jackie Robinson, who broke the color barrier. I hate that they even call it that, the color barrier. What is that exactly? He broke the color barrier in baseball. Do you know that Jackie Robinson actually put in his contract? He had it in his contract, not at the insistence of the Brooklyn Dodgers at the time. He put it in his contract on his own terms, on his own volition. He said, I will never be violent towards anyone who displays any types of violence towards me. If someone spits at me, I will not react. That takes one heck of a person to put something like that in writing and abide by it. And you think of people across this country, all around the world, but I have to specifically call out the United States as a whole, where we're celebrating this 3-day weekend, but how many people out there have zero appreciation for what these trailblazers did? This weekend isn't just about Martin Luther King Jr. This is about all the people in the world who have made different types of sacrifices for you and for me. And I know that a lot of times we think of sacrifices as being people in the military, and I have such tremendous respect for people in the military. I have people in my family who have served. My father served in the Navy. I have other relatives who served in the different branches of the armed forces. I have students who are in the reserves. They have served in the past. I have students who are currently serving and ones who are planning on entering. But this is not just about the military. These are about people in the world who have made a difference. They have done things to break the norm. And the purpose of this episode, and by using these quotes, is to hopefully give you some inspiration to make some change and to add some perspiration to your life and to start making some type of a difference. So, yes, if you look at my eyes, I certainly look tired, but I do these episodes and I bring you this podcast with very, very good reason, because we have people out there who take things for granted and they're not doing a thing to contribute to this world. They're not doing anything. They're just occupying space. Don't be that person. I challenge you not to be that person, to try to figure out who you are and what type of difference you are going to make in this crazy world. And it is a very crazy world. But you know what? There's some type of talent. There's some type of special something you have inside of you, and you need to figure out what it is and bring it. Bring it. And the more, I think the people that have gone through the most adversity and people who have gone through troubled times, and you know what? You don't have to be 35 years old to go through some difficult times. I know plenty of teenagers out there who have it tough. I mean, they've got it tough on an everyday basis. Heck, I got kids that are 10, 11 years old in my classroom. They got difficult lives. They've seen things that 30-year-olds have never even seen before. Absolutely qualified. Absolutely qualified. Even if not adults, whenever that's supposed to be at age 18. So we're going to move on. And I'm glad that I have Esther there to be able to say something like that, because it really does. It is a reminder to you, but it also serves as a nice reminder for myself why I do what I do, why I do these podcasts, why I teach, why I get so fired up about what I do. I don't know any other way. This is the only way that I know how to do it. This is the only way that I know how to speak. And anybody who knows me, once you get me going, look out. Look out. And I know that about myself, because when you get me going about certain types of things, I become a fireball. But you can never take away my passion. That's one thing you certainly can't take away from me. And with that, let's go to number 8. Quote number 8 from Dr. King. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. So you have made a decision to cut someone off on the road. You have affected people directly and indirectly by your actions. You certainly affected the other motorists coming from the opposite direction, but you also affected other people indirectly who were not there. Perhaps the person who needs to go to a location who's now going to be a little bit later is going to get to that location, and now it's going to impact someone. Well, it depends on how you look at it, but you could look at it as being indirectly. If you think about the actions by politicians and how they affect you directly, but also affect you indirectly, you are responsible for you. You are responsible for your actions, and you have to live with the decisions that you make. That's simply how I interpret that quote. If you do the right thing, if you work hard, you're not going to have any regrets then. And no one can call you out if you're not working to the best of your ability. Number 9. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you have to do, keep moving forward. One of my favorite motivational speakers of all time, Les Brown. Les Brown always talks about moving forward. Just Some Guy 471 and Carlos followed up with an excellent question, and I appreciate that a lot. I really appreciate the quick comment, because I was waiting to see if somebody in the chat was going to type that. What if you can't move, period? What if I'm paralyzed? You want to know the reality? The reality is that so many people in this world are mentally paralyzed. Because I'm going to tell you something right now. I don't care if you can run or walk or crawl. I don't care, or if you can fly. If you are not moving forward with this, what's the purpose? What is your purpose exactly? How many people I know who are mentally paralyzed, the same exact routine every single day. They don't change anything at all. And I hate to say it, but in the end, it usually results in TV at the end of the day after working at a job that they didn't work very hard at. They didn't exert much effort. They don't enjoy it all. They come home. They eat dinner at the same exact time. They exert zero brain power with anything that they do. They plop themselves down on the proverbial couch, sit in front of the proverbial TV or a phone mindlessly until they fall asleep. Rinse, recycle, repeat. There are so many people in the world who are doing that. So with this quote talking about flying, running, walking, and crawl, it has nothing to do with the body in motion. Rather, it has to do with the brain in motion. You want a name? Here's someone you can look up. Stephen Hawking. Find out what Stephen Hawking did once he was completely paralyzed. I believe quadriplegic. I'm not sure, just paraplegic. Everything was taken away from him except for his brain. And I think he had extremely limited motion in other parts of his body. Stephen Hawking lived a very, very full life. Stephen Hawking did so much for the scientific community. It never slowed him down in any way, shape, or form until he passed away not too long ago. He's a classic example of someone who he never stopped moving forward. He always wanted to challenge things and to challenge himself. So I think that that's the best answer I can give you to that. And I'm so glad. This is what makes this podcast different from others, because we have people who are here in the chat who are ready to respond and are able to chime in rather than me have to speak the entire time. So thank you so much to those two people who mentioned that. We're going to move on to number 10. Carlos, I will tell you this before I go to number 10. And this one's a little tough. I'm going to take a little drink here before I explain this next one. A little over a year ago, Carlos, I had the opportunity to visit the homes of 15 children who were suffering in one way or another. They either had different forms of cancer, and the cancer was terminal in each case. All had inoperable brain tumors, stage 4 cancer in some cases. One particular situation, I was supposed to meet the child, and the child had to be rushed to the hospital just before I got there. And the other children were all neurologically impaired in one way or another. And they were bound to wheelchairs, or they were bound to a couch. And in all of those situations, in all of those homes, I can tell you that none of their caretakers, whoever those people were, they have never felt like it was a burden. And I can tell you that going through that experience was life-changing for me. And it has been even more life-changing when I've had the opportunity to meet other people who have different types of special needs. One of the greatest joys in the world right now I have, and the privilege that I have, is each day I have at least one class that is a special needs, special education class, and I love it. I mean, the these kids are amazing. And I hate when people, they think you're saying amazing because you're trying to uh, make people feel good or to make people feel better. That's not it. They truly are amazing. I have children that I teach now who have autism. Their recall is insane. It is incredible. The things that they are able to remember from one class to the next. I was telling a colleague recently, I have children right now who I'll put a video on, and I have this one particular autistic child. He knows the video down to the nanosecond. I mean, he knows the video inside out. And the way that I know this is because he's able to not only recite the entire video, but he gets extremely upset if I stop the video early. If that video is 2 minutes and 15 seconds, he needs that video to go the full 2 minutes and 15 seconds. He knows right to the very, very end how the video is going to play out. And you think of so many people out there that do not pay attention to such intricate detail. So when we come down to people being burdens, do you want to know a burden of mine? A burden of mine are people who I work with. When I say work with, I'm not talking about students I necessarily teach in school. I'm talking about people who I work with who are not working to their maximum potential. I'm talking about people that I work with. And I'm not talking about necessarily people that I work with at my job in school. I'm talking about people that I work with outside in the private sector who are not giving their all. Those people are my burden. They're the ones that I have to give them a kick in the pants constantly. Yes, those people are definitely much more of a burden than any type of teaching situation I ever encounter. I have never once, not once, the 15,000 students I've ever taught in my career, have I ever considered anyone a burden. No one is a burden. No child that I've ever taught is a burden. And if you're in teaching and you consider your kids to be a burden, you know what? Maybe it's time to find a new occupation. There's my very, very direct stance on that one. Let's now move on to number 10. Whoop. This one's a little bit on the long side. We're going to have to break it up a bit. Okay. Here we go. Let's get that out of there. Okay. And then this. Okay. Number 10. Change does not roll in on the wheel of inevitability. And I'll be okay. Number 10. Change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability. I can't believe I can't speak today. Inevitability. Inevitability. I'm going to work on this word, inevitability, but comes through a continuous struggle. And so we must straighten our backs and work for our freedom. A man can't ride you unless your back is bent. Wow. This one's very, very simple. You have to be willing to change. I just got done saying this recently to a colleague. You've got to be willing to change. If there's something you don't like, if there's someone who doesn't like you, if there's something that's not going the way that you want it to go, vice versa. Well, Unfortunately, the other people or the other parameters are they're very, very, very unlikely to change. So who has to change? You. You need to make a change. Classic example. I have a classroom with some children who do not speak English at all or do not speak English well. Whose fault is that? It's not their fault. That's not their fault at all. This is the situation that I have as a teacher. Now, I can complain, well, why don't these kids know English? I can complain and say, well, they have no choice. They have to just conform, and they're going to have to just understand that I'm doing this in English. I'm not going to change myself for them. Or I can start class the way I started the other day, and in my best attempt at speaking Spanish, have several prepared statements and start off by saying, my Spanish is not very good, but I'm going to do the very best that I can to communicate with you. And to be able to say to them in a very, very comparing and very compassionate voice, I'm here for you. And we're going to figure this out. And I'm going to try to do some more things in Spanish. As a matter of fact, in that particular class, I showed a video that actually had English subtitles, and the video was in Spanish. And it was interesting because some of the Spanish words were actually over some of their heads. But just the fact that I went out of my way to create a lesson for them that had a music video with Spanish speaking, Spanish singing, and Spanish music, it meant so very much to them. This is the way that you make connections with people. This is how you do it, my friends. You have to change. You have to look within yourself. You have to figure out, how can I do things differently? Change means everything. Number 11. These last 3 get to be a bit more profound, but I hope that they will be ones that you will enjoy and be able to read back on. Number 11. I cannot forget that the Nobel Prize for Peace was also a commission to work harder than I had ever worked before for, quote, the brotherhood of man. It means that when Dr. King and others before him had received the Nobel Peace Prize for Peace, or Nobel Peace Prize, it made him, he was beyond just being humbled. It was that he accepted the award, but it spurred him to want to work even harder to do things for the overall betterment of humankind. And he wanted to be very, very profound, as Esther was asking, profound, very serious, very, very thought-provoking, a type of thing where you will listen to someone say something and you'll say, Wow. Wow, that's powerful. Wow, that's so beautiful. Wow, that's so eloquent. That would be an example of something that's profound. Number 12. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to go with number yeah, I'm going to do this one for number 12. And then I'm going to actually flip these here in the end. You're welcome. Always here to help. Always here to help, Esther. All right, this one's a long one. And this one's something. Number 12. We have deluded ourselves into believing the myth that capitalism grew and prospered out of the Protestant ethic of hard work and sacrifices. Capitalism was built on the exploitation of black slaves and continues to thrive on the exploitation of the poor, both black and white, both here and abroad. I mean, I can't even I can actually say with number 12, I have nothing to add. I am not qualified to add anything to number 12 for no other reason than it was said by someone who absolutely in every way, shape, way, and form earned a day in his honor. And number 12 is the very reason why we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Number 12 is the very reason that you should be spending some portion of the day reflecting on his life, researching his life, finding out what type of sacrifices the man made for you, for us. That's what number 12 is all about. Said with humble conviction. And to wrap up tonight's episode, number 13. And again, all 13 of these quotes are in the chat. Mabel, it's great to see you. Thank you for joining us here tonight. Number 13. Without hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the primitive forces of social stagnation. So we must help time and realize that the time is always ripe to do right. You work hard, the reward is going to be there. You have to trust me on that. You've tuned in to these podcasts. You've tuned in tonight for whatever reason. I'm telling you that hard work does pay off. It's not just a phrase. It's not just a cliche. Hard work pays off. But I have to tell you something else. We must help time and realize that the time is always ripe to do right. Your time is now. What are you waiting for? Because I can assure you, as I said, immediately after receiving my master's degree, I'm not waiting for anything. I have very, very big plans in the works for 2020. Big plans. And they will be revealed in the very, very near future on different things I plan on doing. outside of public education. I have absolutely no desire, no ambition to leave public education for many, many years to come. I am so very, very lucky, so privileged to be where I am with what I believe to be the greatest kids in the world, surrounded by the most amazing colleagues. But there's so much more that I have to accomplish. And there's no point in waiting for anything. When you feel the time is right to do it, just do it. Don't wait, just do it. So, what I say to all of you out there is to take the time, do some research, ask questions, and the quotes that you don't necessarily understand, the words that you don't understand, check them out. And please, tomorrow, spend some time not just reflecting on the life of Martin Luther King Jr., but of so many others like him who have made our lives better with their unspeakable and unthinkable sacrifices. Peace.